Give it 1 second, make sure everything's spooled here. And we'll get started. Anybody enjoying happy hour? A little Irish whiskey on this end. Toast. Okay, so good evening. It's NutBallCop once again. It's dark early again. Again, watch my last video about DST. I hate daylight savings times. I have always hated daylight savings time. Now that I work in computer operations and data and security, I loathe daylight savings time. And this is the real weird thing when it's, before 5:30 and it's already getting dark. This is the time of year that I always know it's Halloween because, it's getting dark early, but I really don't want, I want DST to go away. I was just in a international AI coding meeting. A bunch of interested people we gets together through a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and I just got out of that meeting, and that's the one thing I said during the meeting is we need to get rid of daylight savings time, because even that meeting was screwed up because the host is in Mexico City and they're on standard time, not daylight savings. And of course, half the audience showed up an hour late because of the differentials. We just go back to standard time. It's ridiculous. Okay, so let's talk about the 60 Minutes interview. Donald Trump went back to 60 Minutes. Dear Leader, Porn Star Humper, Part 2, 60 Minutes. Horrible. None of that went well. Let's put it that way. It was a horrible interview and more insight to sort of the megalomaniac narcissist that he really, really, really enjoys being. And it's wrong. It's dangerous. It's not good leadership. At times it's unpresidential. And I give presidents a lot of leeway. Like everybody's freaking out because Trump dropped the fuck bomb a couple of times. That I don't even care. Okay. LBJ swore at his tailor on the tapes because he admits seamed his crotch in his suit and it was quote unquote pitching his fucking dick. Okay. I have bigger problems with Dear Leader. But his 60 Minutes interview. Now remember, he disagreed to a 60 Minutes interview, which was a long form interview, which they had to edit. What did he sue 60 Minutes for prior? Editing an interview, which he thought was incomplete and gave out the wrong information. And now that we find out that through the background of the whole interview, like little back end excerpts that got cut out are now being released. Yeah, the interview went even worse than I originally thought. Okay, so full disclosure, I spent a lot of time with ChatGPT 5. And again, I use long-term memory. I give ChatGPT 5 instructions. I don't allow it to tell me something without giving me multiple links. So everything you're hearing here is Time Magazine, the Federal Register, Reuters, Energy Markets, Wall Street Journal, Mining Technology Briefing, this is all source articles. I did the research, then I had to click all the links to go read all the articles to make sure, it didn't get it wrong. But I outline a lot of my stuff using artificial intelligence, and it's simply an outlining tool. Okay, it's the same way like I'm when I'm coding Python or I'm coding PowerShell, I use what's called an integrated development environment. It's a smart environment. So when I start like typing the first couple of characters of a well-known library or command or function, it fills it out for me. I just hit tab and boom, it knows what I want. Boom, keep coding down. When you're trying to pump out 1,000 lines of code in a day, and I'm not the world's best programmer, I just code for administrative and data and security purposes. You'll never see me like writing an edition of Microsoft Word or developing a Sid Meier game, like considering downloading Civilization 7. So I can say I played every single Civilization that's ever been released on every platform. But I'm never going to develop a video game. I run my own machine learning and AI, including generative art AI, on my own GPUs. I have a NVIDIA, not an NVIDIA. It's an NVIDIA chip, but it's a gigabyte mod. It's a Windstream overclocked RTX 5090. card, which is pretty awesome. I wanted the Founders Edition direct from NVIDIA. I couldn't get one, and I tried. So I ended up buying a Gigabyte, which is a good mod shop. And I love the card. It's got great performance. And I've run LLMs, generative art, machine learning, Python on CUDA code all locally on my card. So I actually work with machine learning and AI and data and security and stuff. So hopefully I'm not being an amateur at this, but I just want to fully disclose that, yeah, when I do a lot of research and stuff, it's through who I call Sal 9000. And I talked about that before. The 2010, the follow-up to 2001: A Space Odyssey, you get to meet Sal 9000, Hal's sister, voiced by Meredith Baxter, by the way. So I talk to Sal a lot. Go talk and chat with him, text chat. So what I did was I gave it the entire link from CBS News, which is the full official transcript from CBS. And then we did fact checking, and then we did discussions on topics. And I'm going to go down a few of those things. And let's start with trade tariffs and China. This is, again, all 60 Minutes, the O'Donnell interview with Dear Leader. He said, we got no rare earth threat. That's gone, completely gone. Okay, I'm not a metallurgist. I'm not in the mining industry, but I'm well read enough on materials, especially being in the computer industry, that nobody, unless you're in two spots on Earth, neither one of them is good for America. One's in Saudi Arabia, the little part, and the big part is in China. Okay, that's where the productionalized rare earths come from when you're talking the super majority of the market. Okay, so nobody, unless you're in those two locations, have rare earth security. You're at the whims of those governments providing that productionalization of those materials. The reality, and this is again sourced at Time Magazine, the U.S.-China has gotten into not even a treaty or a deal. It's just an understanding that suspends some of China's rare earth exports. Because remember, Dear Leader's plan was, hey, China, here's 25% tariffs. Oh, you don't like that? Fuck you. Here's 40% tariffs, 50% tariffs, 100 tariffs. He wakes up in the morning, who knows what the number is going to be. It's like there's a integer wheel in the White House, and Stephen Miller. I always thought he was a vampire. I'm more thinking of him as Igor now. Igor, Young Frankenstein. Does he spin the wheel and figure out what the tariffs are every morning? Because there's no sense beyond random choice or angst or grievance. But what is happening is multiple, not just, and I independently went off and Google News this. Multiple outlets are reporting that this is a temporary truce on the spat for spat for spat for spat for spat, if I got the levels right there. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They've been going after each other since the inauguration. This just puts a tiny little pause on some of the stuff we really need. They're still going to restrict other things because they know it's their little twist of the knife into our backs. And they're agreeing to a 1-year pause, but it has restrictions and it's not a permanent end. So to make the statement, we got no rare earth threat, quote unquote, that's completely false. That is almost delusionally false. Okay. And he this is something I'm getting really worried about because this one is highly sourced. This is the Federal Register and 4 other sites all reporting almost the identical thing. Trying to use the touchscreen. It's not. Let me hit that arrow. Yeah, this is coming from multiple rags, like insider, on topic rags. They're all reporting the same thing, that Trump makes this claim, and this is the quote. Breaking news. Cheryl out of New Jersey, the governor has just won over the Dear Leader backed Republican candidate. That is awesome news. I didn't want any allies of dear leader at the state level. None. Zero. It's like Nixon. We got to move on. Talked about that in a couple of live videos ago, how everybody except a couple of people moved on from Nixon, and the people who did stay on, the handful, all got booted out the next term. That's our mission as Americans, as voters, as citizens right now. Make sure none of the legacy stick around. He says we have very big tariffs, almost 50%. We'll be taking in hundreds of billions of dollars. Biden's let my tariffs lapse by exceptions on almost everything else. That is an outright misrepresentation, because he's so I think he is decapacitated right now. I'm guessing dementia or strokes. I'm not a doctor. I don't know him. I've never met him, but he's showing some general patterns of how old people go south quick. Okay. Luckily, my wife's parents are very elderly. They're both sharp as tacks in their 80s. And that makes me very, very happy, because if they did this shit, I'd be worried. Okay. We went to 100% on EVs against China. Okay. The instigation was on our side. Okay. Dear leader drove the instigation of the situation. That's what happened. This was not a mutual affray. This was one guy starting a fight. Okay. And then he did semiconductors at 50%, solar cells at 50%. And then the list kept going on and on and on. That's a huge freaking problem if you want healthy trade between the two countries. And even though I have a huge list of problems with Chinese government, not Chinese people, but the Chinese government, a lot of my friends here are Chinese. A lot of people I work with are Chinese. I don't have a problem with Chinese people. I have a problem with the Chinese government. I'd rather trade with them than be at war with them. So let's not get raked over the coals. Let's not screw up things too badly. Not give in to them, but let's trade with them. Except under Biden, the exceptions did not, the exclusions that Trump carved out, almost every single one of those stayed true through the Biden administration. Okay, and that was one of my criticisms at Biden's. I go, what are you? You're almost identically following Trump's tariff policy. And I'm like, why? Okay. Especially when it comes to North America, we have to get over this nationalist thinking that Mexico, Canada, United States is one manufacturing and trade zone. It is. And the more we realize that, sensibly, by the way, the better off the whole continent is. And that includes places like some bad parts in America and some bad parts in Mexico getting more peaceful. Okay, less crime. Less reliance on crime for income. Get it? Build a better economy, better things will happen. You know, the tech boom, when I started in the industry, we're right in there. And, you know, like Carl's Jr. on First Street in San Jose is paying like $17.50 an hour starting wages to flip a burger. And they were beating people off at the door for the jobs. Okay. When it's booming, it's great. It's how you deal with the boom and how you meter things out so you don't always end up in a boom bust cycle. But we don't seem to give about that shit anymore, especially if you're dropping tariffs like this. You're just going to screw markets up. Everything is going to be stochastic, which means, you know, you're not going to have an even flow from point A to point B. It's all going to be all over the place, and it's going to not follow the patterns of the previous data. That's where things get unpredictable and they get really dangerous. And tariffs, as they're applied, I'm not anti-tariff like 100%. I'm like 80% anti-tariff. Only use tariffs when you really have to protect something that has to do with true national defense and feeding the country. Okay. And that should be well reviewed and openly reviewed. These shouldn't be willy-nilly. I woke up in the morning and I think EVs deserve 100% tariff. That's not how you should be applying tariffs. And by the way, the Senate should be checking this. And they just did. I got to give them credit. They finally woke up. They did 2 votes in a row, 2 days in a row, and literally pimp slapped dear leader. They're like, nope, your Canada tariffs are bullshit. Nope, your Brazil tariffs are bullshit. And they are. And they are. You want to build more housing in American while you tax the shit, you import tax like a madman on lumber and lumber product coming out of Canada? That's dumb. You're screwing the housing market and the construction trade over a grievance that's not actually in existence with Canada. Canada's our friends. Okay. I know a lot of Canadians. Like one of my best friends is in Toronto. We talk all the time. And tell me, I mean, absolutely certain. Like a lot of my family are Canadian on my mom's side, my late mom's side. They're not at war with us. They're just pissed off because Trump keeps fucking with them. The same thing with the Germans. Our German relatives were just here. We had an afternoon and an evening with them, and they're like, "No, we still love you guys. We love America. We love Levi jeans. Madonna. All the stuff of the '80s. And we love technology you guys put out, and being a world education center. There's a lot of things to love America about, but your leadership is totally screwed up." And we're like, "We know. And they really did. The Germans really didn't like the way Dear Leader treated Angela. No, yeah, she's an incredibly smart person and a really good leader, and he just treated her like a doormat. And the Germans, that's one thing the Germans are truly mad at him about. The rest of it is like, you could do better, but they're mad about the Merkel thing. And rightfully so. He treated her awfully. But okay, so he's all over the place, and he made the claim that because he implemented 100% tariffs on some sectors coming out of China, that's what China brought to the table, and that's what gave him his grand, illustrious win he thinks he got. Time and other sources have another side of the story. It wasn't a one-side capitulation. It wasn't like China got on there. He's, oh, so sorry for, screwing up your brilliant trade idea. No, that's not what happened. So it's kind of on the whole trade tariff, his whole Asia trip, it was facile. It was misrepresentation to bold-faced lie, depending on the second. And he didn't get what he thinks he got. And if he thinks he did, then he's of diminished capacity, and he probably shouldn't be president. Because I'm pretty sure W would understand this. W would understand what the hell's going on. Anybody else, Eisenhower forward, would understand what's going on. I don't think Dear Leader does. He says, and then this is a quote, "We will deal with China." He meant China. We will deal with NVIDIA, but not the most advanced. The most advanced, we will not let anybody have them other than the United States. We already allow the less powerful chips to China. That's nothing new. That's not an innovation. That wasn't something they declared at the meeting. That's something that already exists. And the most advanced chips, our allies get them. China's not getting them. But if you don't think boxes of them, not just boxes, but crates of them aren't being given to Britain and other places to do their research, you'd be wrong. They're either subscribing to it over as a cloud service from overseas, or they're running their own racks in data center, and we're giving them the best chips to do it on. So this only US, no, that's not true at all. There are some licensing and some shifting rules every once in a while they spout out, but that doesn't really change the heart of the matter here at all. I thought this was hilarious. AI data centers are coming at the worst time as far as infrastructure goes, because we're way behind on major grid upgrades. and I've talked about this before, we should have a hell of a lot next gen nuclear already up and running. That nuclear should be the baseline. If you give a shit about climate change, climate disruption, which I always thought was a better label, if you give a shit about that, Zoran just won New York City. Cuomo is not going to be the mayor of New York. Okay, I'll deal with Zoran for what he is. I already talked about him lots before, but as long as it's not Cuomo or Silva, then I'm okay. We don't have a problem in office. We just have a disagreement about policy. That's fine. Good for you, Zoran. Good for you, New York City. Like I voted for Prop 50 tonight. Hurt like hell. Ethical. My ethics bug was biting me in the neck. But I don't want my kids growing up in East Germany under the Stasi or under Germany in the 1930s and 40s with the Nazis. Okay. My wife's family's German. I already talked about that a lot. Okay. My daughter's middle name is named after her great grandmother who got stuck behind the wall and lived her life out in East Germany. A commie fucking hellhole. Okay. I don't want that for my kids. So I'm throwing out my ethics tonight and I feel really bad about it, but I'm fighting fire with fire. Sorry. My wife and I went back and forth. We talked about this for hours over the last weeks. We're both in the same moral quandary. We don't like it. It's not what Gavin Newsom is telling us. It's just throwing out what we did for the nonpartisan redistricting committee this time, which is bullshit. So somebody on the other side is going to come back, or some weirdo from a third party is going to come in, the next generation, Lyndon LaRouche, and they're going to use the same tactic, and it could be really harmful. So it's a roll of the dice, and I don't like it, but I voted for it anyways. Same way if I lived in New York City, I'd have probably voted for Sohan because I see all the others as major problems. I see Eric Adams as a problem now. I saw him as a problem when he was a supervisor in NYPD. I don't want him to be, I'm glad he dropped out because I don't want him to be mayor again. I don't want to be Cuomo to be mayor. I don't want Civil to be mayor. I don't want the little crank that I saw in the local news on YouTube. Definitely not that guy. I forget his name, but woohoo! He's real, but really out there. So he said, quote, we are winning the AI race because companies are making their own electricities. Approvals are done in 2 to 3 weeks. It used to take 20 years. Okay, first of all, the 20 years he's talking about is nuclear power plants. That took 20 years. I think we can get that down to 3 to 5 safely, and not build them where we would have a tsunami or an earthquake. Like putting them in the Midwest where the manufacturing is. Put them in Arizona, which is the most geographically safe place to do things, and power up a lot of the West through the Southwest, like we did with the coal fire plant in Wyoming in the late 50s, but just bigger scale with nuclear. If you do nuclear right, more than 99% of what comes out of the reactor can be recycled and put in again and again and again and again. The French already do it in their breeder reactors. Okay. I wrote an essay about this. I used to be the world's most anti-nuclear person because I had the shit scared out of me in West Germany when Chernobyl blew up. I was in West Germany in the woods training when Chernobyl went up, and I told that whole story before. But yeah, I was pretty paranoid about nuclear energy, and then I started watching Professor Rizek at Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Illinois University, and he's a doctor of engineering. He builds power plants. That's what he does. And watching his information and talking to physicists I used to work with when I worked at a national lab, I was completely wrong about nuclear energy. Chernobyl was a Fermi pile, not a commercial reactor plant like we have, like the French run or the British or we do today. Anything that was built last gen in the late cycle. And don't confuse, like, the biggest thing is don't confuse 3 Mile Island with Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a blowout. Okay, an explosion. Okay, nothing left the containment vessel other than a steam release to release the pressure at 3 Mile Island. They're not even in the same category of nuclear disaster. Nothing. Go watch the guy T. Folsey on YouTube. He's an actual engineer, works at a power plant, and he works on the emergency team. He goes through a lot of these things in detail. They're really long videos, like 45 minutes to like an hour and a half. But if you really want to learn about one of these nuclear incidents, go actually learn it from an actual nuclear engineer, and he's really good. So it takes 20 years. Total bullshit unless you're building a nuclear power plant. You can build a natural gas regional in 5 to 7 years, easy. So he doesn't know the energy market, and he doesn't understand that 9/11 distracted us for a lot of reasons, even though we can't pay attention politically a lot anyways. So we run into a huge problem when we really need something, and we really need something next gen, and that need was getting recyclables up as fast as we can while we baseline with nuclear and get coal offline. Coal is the absolute worst thing to use for electricity and energy. Absolutely worst thing. Okay. So we should have been moving toward that and away from fossil fuels. We should have begun wind, solar, including vertical wind, not just the big blades out there, but also vertical winds on homes and commercial buildings, especially for overnights, because especially if you're by the shore or by a big lake, you get a lot of thermal wind changes because of the temperature gradients between land and water. And like I live pretty close to the ocean, so yeah, we're always getting a breeze. If you can get a turbine spinning at 11 miles an hour in the wind, you could generate enough electricity and then some by a small margin to run everything on in the house at night, like your security lighting and night lights and computers that were left on or whatever. You could easily generate enough of your energy, and if enough homes in a neighborhood are doing it, when that breeze kicks in, you could totally feed back to the total grid. And that's another advantage in nuclear. Nuclear is totally tunable. Like they can literally watch the grid going, oh, wow, you need more. Oh, wow, you need less. And they can then go, meep, 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 and adjust for that. And then the substations, the natural gas regionals can kick in and level everything out. So he doesn't understand energy policy whatsoever. He doesn't understand what takes what. Um, uh, the problem is not the AI data center. It's the problem is we're not admitting that we're way behind in grid improvements. Not just new power plants, not just more renewables. It's fixing the transmission grid too, and making sure it's safer, especially in woodlands after PG&E burned down, most of the California woods over the past few years. Okay. Even though that was predicted, that was completely predicted. It wasn't a certainty it was going to happen, but it was a probability it was going to happen. And it happened. And, yeah, now we're burying all the high tension wires because that was the safest thing to do in the first place. And that's according to the judge too. Common sense says that, of course, but they had to be told in court. Now, what is real, according to the Wall Street Journal, is some hyperscaler AI data centers are doing on property power generation. So they're generating a fraction of what they need. Sometimes it's a big fraction of what they need, but then they're still pulling off the grid. Okay. And since way power plans work and utilities charge people, residential and small commercial is going to pay any improvement bills to handle any of this new stuff in your neighborhood. So this all comes down to more expense for us because we weren't prepared for the next technology wave. We weren't prepared for whatever. Our electrical grid wasn't prepared for what comes after the gasoline automobile, what comes after .com. Well, we got EVs and AI. Okay. And we're just simply not prepared for it, nor is Congress making the real investments and including investments on major prototyping on how to improve generation, transmission, storage, safety, and making sure that we can switch, or at least our local commercial transportation and our passenger fleet to all electric. There's no reason we can't go all electric. I've been running a 10.2 kilowatt solar array now for 13, 14 years. I've owned an EV since 2013. Yeah, the year after I bought the EV to plug in hybrid. you don't need a giant array like mine. I just have a big house and I run my computers for my business in the house. And that's why I have a big array. So my electric bill isn't high. I kind of pre-bought it at a fixed price with solar panels. That's the advantage of solar panels. You're buying ahead all your big chunk of your electricity. Like literally 96% of my electricity comes off my roof. Um, Minus the new tariffs they put on us. So yeah, we should be, we are so far behind on what we should already have in place. We should already have a smart grid. I mean, Hawaii's ahead of everybody else because they had to be. Because importing fuel is expensive. It's extra transportation cost. You got to pay for the diesel to get the fuel there so you can burn it in Hawaii. It's just cheaper to put up windmills and solar panels in Hawaii by a factor of, I think, 2. If I remember correctly, I had the whole conversation. I went to the Buddhist temple to go hang out and relax. And I'm not Buddhist, I'm an atheist. I just like the place. It's really quiet and it's very nice and it's beautiful. It's at the end of the island and all the architecture is beautiful. And I like to go there and relax sometimes when I'm there. And 2 retired Maui cops were practicing longbows, old ancient longbows. And we got to struck up a big conversation and they were like, oh yeah, I'm totally conservative, law and order, all that, ex-military, totally 100% green. Love our windmills, love our solar panels. I've had solar panels twice. He's had solar panels so long, he's had 2 different sets of solar panels on his house. It's just an economic factor. Hawaii is so expensive to get the fuel there to burn it. Okay, to generate the electricity. It's just easier to put the panels there and the windmills there. And like every home on Maui, even when we first went there, it's an amazing high percentage of the homes will all have solar. That should be happening almost everywhere in the United States, and especially like the obvious places like California, the Southwest, the desert, most of Texas. You get into little problems, with durability, but I'm sure the manufacturers already figured out how to deal with hail and storms and stuff like that. Like mine was put on, and I told the installers, the 2 brothers that were the chief of the installer teams, that were really good. I said, you have to make sure that even 110-mile-an-hour wind can't rip those things off, rip those solar panels off. And he goes, we got it. We'll lug it. We have all the weight ratings. We have all the calculations. Don't worry. That those panels aren't going anywhere. It's all aluminum frame, steel bolted into the roof. My roof is double bonded. The solar panels aren't going anywhere. We've had some winter storms where we've had near 100-mile-an-hour winds up here, like bending trees over and stuff. Really bad storms. So if we can take the storms, we have hail once in a while, not too often, and it's gotten like noticeable, but not like the crazy stuff that you see in Oklahoma and Texas where it comes down the size of baseballs or bigger. Luckily, we don't have that there, but we have like high winds. That's one of our problems. And so, yeah, even my 1969 home, the roof and the foundation is strong enough where we just bolt everything in and it survived, easily a dozen huge storms over its lifetime already. I couldn't be any more pro solar if I tried. Okay. Because I'm a solar owner. I'm an EV hybrid charger in the garage. I'm charging right off the panels in the noon forward. Poof. With gas prices on the West Coast, yeah, I love our EV. Saved us a lot of money over the years. Since I'm a geek and I run computer equipment like crazy in the house. Yeah, I'm also glad because I sell a bunch of electricity back during the day, and at night when I'm playing, my GPUs, I'm playing a game, I'm doing AI art, whatever, and I'm working on my server that's down in the garage, which is a giant dual Xeon Gold machine. Yeah, I've sold enough electricity back most of the year that I pay for my electricity compute time at night. Within 2 years, here's another quote that just did, when I heard him say it, I was just like, are you nuts? Within 2 years, we'll have 40-50% of the chip market. Right now, we have almost none. The biggest companies are leaving Taiwan because of the tariffs. None of that is fucking true. And then like at first order, I'm already well enough read up about how chips are made and how TSMC works and how the company that actually makes the engraving stuff, how they work, how this whole ecosystem for chips works. He just said that, and my jaw just dropped. I was like, Jesus, that's either a total dementia patient statement or you have no fucking clue how, or both, or you have no fucking clue how the market works, how the chip market works. And yes, of course, even though I kind of knew this, we went through Semiconductor Industry Journal and Reuters. We make about 12%, about one out of every transistor made on planet Earth, we make. Okay. Okay, where does he get this idea that we don't make chips? We've always made chips. Yes, a lot of it moved overseas, like a lot of it happened with a lot of other manufacturings during globalization. Yes, of course. But to say we have no chip manufacturing market is absurd. Especially the cheap, dirty chips. Yeah, those going to go to China because they just make them like at a rock bottom price. We can't match. But anything that requires any specialty, yeah, it's being made here. It's always been made here. The manufacturing, even though like you're moving, a chip manufacturing plant that requires a ton of fresh water in an area that's already ran out of water. That aside, we're building chip plants in several areas. Okay. We will regain a chunk of the market. The predictions right now is we'll have about 28% of the market by 2032. Okay. Um, we're not getting to even half of the market. Never mind 40 to 50%. I mean, that is ludicrous. And that's one of the big points I'm saving toward the end to tell you about how ludicrous this thought process is in this guy's head and the people around him. Is if you think you could take back from 0 to 50% of the market, you're irrational. That's not how markets work. You're going to have pushback. As soon as you try to seize the market through hostility, you're going to get all sorts of actions from the competitors. And I don't think things are too distributed now. Sans, some raw materials that have very, very localization properties to it. Nothing works like that anymore. Okay. And thinking you can go to 0 to 40 or 50 instantaneously over a year or two or an administration is woefully uninformed. And that's the nicest way I can say it. Or it's complete bullshit. Okay. It doesn't work like that. A 2-year dominance is what the follow-up was here, according to semiconductors.org. And their statement of the industry here, big report, interesting. Now this is the thing that makes his statement like total horseshit. TSMC, I just mentioned them. They're the big company that actually, makes the chips and the big vacuum rooms and the people in the protective suits. Because, even the tiny, like I could never have this beard and work in that type of facility because, hair goes flying all over the place. I'd have to have my hair cropped. I'd have to be clean shaven and still have to wear the mask. The little, I call them moon rooms. Yes, TSMC is expanding in the United States with other manufacturers. That's completely true. But TSMC is also 100% reinvesting, doubling down on their investment in Taiwan. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about or what bullet point, talking point, bullshit speak he was handed by his advisors. That doesn't make any sense. He even frames soybeans as this unilateral win. Not true. It's a mutual stand down. That's how trade stuff gets done. It's ridiculous um, to claim otherwise. It doesn't make any like first order logic sense. The only way you get people to make complete capitulations like Trump presents all his wins, air quotes, is like hostages with guns to their heads. Open the safe. Well, yeah, if you want to consider that a win, but that's not what happened. They said, okay, we'll stop being, radical here. You stop being radical there. We'll call a truce for a year and then we'll meet back at the table. Okay. Nothing is permanently fixed. Nothing is even in the medium term fixed. Okay, these are just, hey, that's just stop being that hostile. This is just a cooling off period. That's all it is. Okay. Um, Biden, quote, Biden let in 25 million immigrants. False. False. He more than doubled the number. But if you take all the immigrants who came in, that's all categories, including the asylums, the refugees, the medical visits, the da 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 da. It's just this reductive answer that doesn't fucking mean anything. Then he just doubled the bullshit. Um, Several news stations immediately fact checked this. There's no credible source for 25 million allowed. That just pulled that out of thin air or out of his diaper. I don't know which one. Um, foreign foreign countries emptied prisons and medical institutions, sent people here. There's zero evidence for that. Now that has happened before. We know Castro did that. And a small percentage of the people who ended up on the boats in that migration rush years ago. But there's no proof that Venezuela did that, for example. That's just crap. He said, quote, we're only deporting criminals. Worst of the worst. Completely untrue. Completely untrue. Well documented. Myriad of newspapers and concluding conservative outlets. I'm going, whoa, they screwed up. I'm not talking about cable TV. I'm talking about newspapers like Christian Science Monitor, Sacramento Bee, that sort of stuff. Quote, DC is unsafe. Crime is out of control. Well, they had a bad pandemic, a really bad one. Okay. If you already got an underlying problem and you have a major thing like a pandemic, you're gonna see really anomalously high spikes, and that's what happened in DC. But year over year, they're down 29%. So crime is like, it's taken a nosedive, and there could be a lot of different reasons for that. Nationally, the violent crime in 2024 fell, according to the FBI, by 4.5%. Crime is not going up; it's going down again. It's going downwards. Pay attention to what I just said. It's going down again. Because that's where it's been going since the 1970s. Have we had spikes up and then go down? The overall trend, if you took a moving average over time, it would be a downward trend. Okay, don't buy the paranoid hype. That's what I'm saying. Oh, this was a beauty. Quote, Chicago's had 4,000 murders under Governor Pritzker. They're trying to really figure out where this is because the city logged in 2023, 2024. So depending how you categorize it, including the suspicious deaths, it's somewhere between the high 500s and 620. Okay, 4,000. But nobody knows where that number comes from. Now, the one number that I really wanted to talk, I got a whole bunch of research here, but I'm scrolling down to the part where he made a claim, and I'm going to read this. Trump says, and that's what they want to do. And so instead of charging somebody 100% tariff and you can make your product outside, they come in and they make, this is why he doesn't finish sentences. And they make, I think he meant, and they'll make it here. Back to the quote. And this is why we have 17 trillion being invested in the United States right now. Okay. And again, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody's intelligence or speaking down to anybody on this. When you start talking about big numbers, even when you work with data and math and big numbers every day, gigabytes, that's billions of bytes. You have to think about big numbers. Okay. Gigabits, gigabytes, terabits, terabytes, all the way up to petabytes in some scenarios. It's like some data arrays. These are really large numbers, and you really have to reduce them into factors to understand the impact. Like I understand, like a trained mathematician who went through, at least a bachelor's and a master's program in applied mathematics, they would completely know, like intuitively, like back of envelope in their head. No, 17 trillion is impossible. There is no way $17 trillion is being invested simultaneously into the United States right now. Okay. Our GDP is what, 22, 23 trillion? So you're telling me there's a 80-ish% increase in our GDP in the first 10 months of your second term? Okay, let's just this is the problem with 17 trillion. Okay. According to DBnomics, the total US private investment, all businesses, all sector in 2024, the gross private domestic investment, like we have the GDP, the gross domestic product, this is the gross private domestic investment, is 5.26 trillion. That's everybody inside and out investing in the United States of America. He thinks 17 trillion, not 5.26 trillion. Okay. And it's not 5.6 trillion because of the tariffs. It's 5.26 trillions in all said and done, all sources, all motivations, all meanings, all dollars. Boom. That's 5.26. There's a big difference in 5.26 and 17. Just leave the trillion off. Okay, for discussion purposes. I know large numbers are hard. I've talked about this before. The larger the numbers get, the harder they get. They get to understand. Even Leonard Susskind, the physicist at Stanford, has talked about that in his speeches and his public instructions. You really have to think about orders of magnitudes and not screw them up. The CapEx on structures, equipment, software, non-residential fixed investment is running at about 4.2 trillion in late 2024 to 2025. Again, that's nowhere near 17 trillion. I don't know where this number is coming from. Direct foreign investment inflows in 2024 is 151 billion. Okay, that's two orders of magnitude. Remember, I keep telling you orders of magnitude math is hard. That's two orders of magnitude. 151 billion, 17 trillion. There's two orders of magnitude in between those two numbers. Where the fuck are you getting 17 trillion? Whose chain are you yanking? Besides JD Vance's. Oh, if you're not watching South Park this year, they're just slaughtering these people. I watched the latest episode on Hulu. They raised the price again. Damn it. I'm about to cancel you and just buy South Park on Fandango or something. Pay per episode. I'm sick and tired of going. Everything has to go back to cable TV. I didn't want a cable TV. That's why I went to DirecTV. I was one of the first satellite owners. I was a satellite owner when it was still called Hughes, not DirecTV. That's how early I was on to DirecTV. That's how much I hated the regional, the national cable TV. I loved cable TV when they were local, when I was a kid. Local cable TV rocked. It was super cheap. I think our whole package when I was a kid was like $6.99. And it was like, we only got 4 channels, 3 of them clear. One was temporary for sports, like championships, the relay station. That's all we had in Western Massachusetts. Cable TV, the co-op came in, and I think we got 36 channels, including channels from New York City, which was super cool. Especially if you love sci-fi movies, and there's late night channels in New York that played them all the time. So I always loved that. That was my first love with cable. But yeah, if you're not watching South Park, find it. Watch it on YouTube. The clips and stuff. They're just satirically massacring the Trump administration, left, right, and sideways, and it's hilarious the way they're doing it, especially with Satan pregnant. That's just so funny. Okay, why 17 trillion is impossible? Why this number is absolutely impossible? That would be 60% of our GDP over again. We go from 100% GDP to 160% GDP in 10 months. Okay. Do you understand what the inflation impact would be? All those dollars, 60% over all those dollars going after the same resources, the same supply and demand. Okay. The price of fuel would have gone crazy. The price of a piece of Caterpillar hardware, you know, graders, backhoes, bulldozers, that sort of things, diesel engines for temporary power at the job sites. The, how many times would they have multiplied in price if you just suddenly shoved 60% more investment into the country all at once? Because 10 months and 60%, that's all at once. Economic wise, I'm not an economics professor. I'm just telling you mathematically, from my working knowledge of working with data and machine learning and linear algebra, matrix algebra, that sort of stuff. I can tell you that you know wherever the boom towns were, your food type prices would be insane because all those temporary workers, and then and by the way, can you imagine the labor shortages we would be having and the immigration that suddenly would have to be allowed to exist, or all your investment would fail? Like, you cannot remove the labor he's talking about. He's talking about removing 11 million people. That's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Okay. You remove that much labor while you're investing 60% more into the GDP. Do you understand the labor shortages you're going to have? Do you understand the price spikes you're going to have? Do you understand how fucking much diesel is going to go up and how the refinery is going to work 24/7 and still can't supply the amount needed? Even if we start getting it from Canada and Mexico, we'll still not be able to get it. Anytime a job starts, what is the main product you need to get a job started in America? Diesel fuel. All your trucks run on it. Your bulldozer runs on it. You're going to grate the site to put your building in? That's a diesel piece of equipment. Oh, your temporary power on site? Your first run to get your scaffolding lighting up and get lights up so your electrician and your conduit guys can work and the plumbing guys can start to work and everything. All that temporary lighting's got to come off of diesel. May come off of natural gas, but most of the market's diesel. Okay, all those supply runs, even with clean trucking that's out there now, what are you talking about? Still 75, 80%? I'm not a trucking expert, I'm guessing here, but I'm saying, like, even if you got a big chunk, like where it's required, like out in the West Coast, the clean fuels, most of your shit's still diesel. Okay. You put 60% more into the economy and you turn the economic burner up that high, that fast. Who knows how high diesel would go? And shortages. Like, you would literally outpace, like, 60% added GDP. I mean, I think you would run out of gasoline, kerosene, propane, and electricity. We couldn't build the infrastructure fast enough. This is how much of a demented fantasy he's trying to sell and say this is the state of the economy. This is a goddamn fairyland. This is Narnia, for Christ's sakes. You can't just dump $17 trillion in the economy and go, look, I win. That's not how economics works. And I'm not even an economics professor. I'm not trying to be a subject. There's plenty of people out there online that explain to you how prices work and how supply works and how financing works. Okay? You just can't insert that much over the top equity and not expect a massive price rock across a whole bunch of needed materials. 60% more investment in GDP dollars, you'd run out of freaking cement probably. You're definitely running out of electricians, especially when you're deporting immigrants. I can't find a plumber in where I live who's not an immigrant. Most of the best electricians in the city Russian immigrants. My dad was a master electrician, residential all the way up to power plants. Um, and I was having a power problem in the server room, and I'm going, and I took photos and I faxed them the photos, uh, and gave him a big description. I told him what I was needing for branch circuits downstream, and I'm going, this is what I think I probably need. And he's going, yeah, you're right, but I would add this, and I'm okay. And he faxed me back, and I had the whole power plan set up, and so the Russian kid showed up, um, journeyman, probably late 20s, early 30s. Um, and I go, hey, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to do your job, right? I'm just saying, like, I know a little bit about electricity. My dad was an electrician. I faxed him this whole problem. We were talking about it. And I go, this is kind of the power plan I was thinking to resolve the power issues I'm having in this room. And he looks at it and he goes, yeah, this is exactly the way I do it. He goes, yeah, perfect. I'll have it done to you before the end of the day. Okay, thank you. Solving my problem. And we're all on batteries downstream, so he can trip things as long as it doesn't trip them longer than 15 minutes. We're still online because all the switches and the servers and everything else are all on batteries. Um, so he had free reign to work as long as he didn't cause an outage longer than 15 minutes, which he didn't have an outage longer than 7 minutes. So we were all fine. But yeah, good luck finding an electrician. Good luck finding a carpenter. I don't think people like in first order, they don't understand unless you start thinking about it. Like, what if 60% more people moved into your city or town in 10 months? What would you be short on? Housing, jobs, food at grocery stores, number of grocery stores to get through without it having, massive lines. Okay. What happens to a train system? Like, I live in an area with trillions of dollars worth of market cap, not one, but two shitty train systems. Okay. The train systems are packed now. Add 60% GDP and all the jobs that come with 60% increase in an area's GDP, and get that fraction that ride the train now, get that increased fraction, get them on the trains too. Good luck. The trains are full now. They've got over 90% ridership in rush hour. In hours around in entertainment sites, anytime a big venue has as an event, they have 100% ridership because nobody wants to pay the parking. I certainly don't. I took the train to see Van Halen. The last show I saw them. Actually, I try to take the train anytime I go into a big event. I just don't like driving to a big event anymore. I'd rather walk, train and walk. Um, so just think about it in that capacity. Like, what if 60% more people lived in your home in 10 months? You'd be short on bedrooms. You'd be really high in a water bill. You need another refrigerator. Your electricity bill is going to go up. Your capital costs are going to go up. Okay, just think about it in local terms to you. What a 60% increase in 10 months would be. That's how absurd telling us that $17 trillion. Never mind, the numbers are available. It's not like we can't look this shit up. Okay, like I told you, like the non-residential fixed equipment investment is 4.2 trillion. That's the SAR number that comes from Fed. Okay, Federal Reserve. where, where the hell are you getting the rest of the 17 trillion? Yeah, there's some other costs that go into this. Okay, that's why you get a differential between 4.2 and 5.26. The rest of it is also, logistics, financing, all the side cost, to the actual fixed investment. You got a ton of side cost. It's running about 20% here, according to the data. And this is data that's published by the government. The leader of the government is telling you, oh, a magical 60% increase of the GDP occurred in 10 months. Look at me. I'm a genius. No, you're a bullshitter. The only thing that's gone up is your stock in your media company. Oh, and I did find out the other day his meme coin crashed hard, which is awesome. I was really happy to hear that. Um, no, this is another way to frame what how $17 trillion is really like, mega land bullshit. If you were to combine the total GDPs of Germany, Japan, India, and the United Kingdom, not just England, but the United Kingdom, that's $17 trillion approximately. So he's telling you the economies of Germany, Japan, India, and the United Kingdom suddenly magically appeared in the last 10 months inside the United States. How is that even remotely possible? Do you know what a global shift of money and resources and financing that would be? I mean, I would love to talk to like, and I have a family friend. He's in international finance. He's an expert in Asian markets. He worked a lot in Asia, uh, and I would really like to know, like, if you were to actually inject that much money, like if his fantasy was actually real, which is not, then you've got to be kidding me. Like, what would happen to like the bond market, the insurance market? Like, how do you get that many dollars in process with any sort of risk management? I mean, 60% increase would be a gold rush that would make the gold rush look silly. And I think this magical mystery hour that he's trying to pull here has a purpose, because two things are about to drop. And I always forget about the other one, because the first one's so disturbing, the Epstein files. Um, like I was saying, like, there ain't one copy. People know it's too well known. Eventually, it's going to get out. And if one of the papers didn't have already a sizable chunk of what they are referring to as the Epstein files, I would be really surprised if nobody had at least some of it. One credible, newspaper. And I said, my reading and some of the things I've come across, if I had to put some money on it, I would say it's the Miami Herald may have some of it. So the other thing that's going to drop is the Jack Smith report. And that's the special prosecutor, the guy who used to work at the Hague, reputable guy. This is like in the legal circles. This is sort of like a uh, uh, for popular culture, Elliot Ness figure. I read about him. I read his CV. Very, very accomplished man, very serious lawyer. Served in some very, very high level cases in the International Crime Court. Knows what he is doing. And they try to discredit him from day one. But they still have to deal with a report that's going to drop eventually. And if I had to again wager, it's probably going to get dropped before the midterms. It would be nice if the Epstein files dropped almost at the same time, because the 1-2 punch, I don't think the administration would, outside of Crazy Town, they wouldn't be a viable administration anymore. Because one of the things that's in the Jack Smith report is the phone records. That's telling you who was talking to who and what, and in some cases why, if there was text messages. So, um, what And I'm thinking the Smith report will verify, if not provide enough evidence to say it's clear beyond a reasonable doubt, is um, the fake elector plan, which a lot of attorneys have already been sacked for, which is good. They've been sacked by their own bars. That's exactly the way the system is supposed to work. I'm actually proud of the state bars who looked at those cases and went, like Ellis. Like, I know she tried to say that she was such a wonderful person for pleading guilty and everything. I'm like, that's, you can say anything you want during your statement before sentencing. That's your gig. But that doesn't stop the state bar from taking your license away, and they did. So it's not only that you have the evidence that the state bars found enough reason that this conspiracy of the fake electors warranted that they should never represent clients under a license again. You're going to have the connection map from the evidence of the in the statements and the included in the Smith report. So you're going to get um, more of a tree diagram of what was connected to who and why. Like, the why can be inferred, of course. Um, and then you're also going to see a factual, unredacted, factual statement of a special prosecutor. Um, this was the Nixon era problem when they got Agnew. When somebody makes an actual statement of finding, and this is what you actually fucking did, and here is every piece of evidence sideways that shows you did it. Um, they had a reason to go after the people, and they can lay it out. That's what's in the report. That's what's, even the zealots like Moses Mike Johnson. He's going to have a real tough time explaining away what's in the Jack Smith report, especially if it comes when he doesn't have any reputation left because they released the Epstein files. Hopefully soon thereafter or just before. Hopefully somewhere in concert. Release would be wonderful. Um, this um, this still isn't in the clear, though, because some of the people in Congress, the usual suspects on the right wing, the far right, are trying to claim privilege and privacy and da 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 da. And basically, what they're asking in layperson's term is they're asking for privacy in a riot that some of them may help design. And that's also suspected to be in the report and highly detailed in the report. So $17 trillion is supposed to be hey, look over here. Don't look behind the curtain. It's one of those moments. Because the $17 trillion, and again, you have to stop and think about it, but just like if you're already at 23 and you've got a hot running economy and the stock market's going up and up and up, on most days that aren't being fucked with by the tariff announcements, and you suddenly add 17 to that, you don't think things are going to go a little crazy, a little haywire? You think everything's going to be smooth and in this economy, in our culture, it's going to be smooth if you suddenly almost increase your stuff by 2/3, and you do that in a gold rush? How many gold rushes do we have to go through that failed before people get it? And you don't have to worry about the trillions. You just have to worry about the base integers. If you're running at X and you increase it by Y, how do you have resources available to do what you say you're going to do? I don't think you could heat up the economy that high without having massive problems across the board and hyper problems at locations where like one of the disasters of if the 17 trillion were true, one of the disasters would be is they'd probably end up more and more in Arizona at the bottom of the Colorado River, which would be not the best place to be putting thing after thing after thing after thing. I know there's environmental risks, and I know there's benefits to being in that valley around Scottsdale in Phoenix because of the low incidence of natural disasters, but you have to go where the some of the main resources you need are most plentiful, and that may not be at the cheapest cost. Okay. Um, you move a building, you move your factory to Wisconsin, you just added millions of dollars just in insulation and millions more per year. And depending on the size of your facility and electricity and heating costs. Okay. Unless you went into, some massive local generation, like solar panels everywhere and your own on-site windmills and everything. Um, the influx of money like that would so low order of probability it would work out the way whatever he has fucked up in his head. Um, the actual mechanics. I mean, look what happened during the housing build bursts. You've created this hyperscale construction system with a fault rate that is almost more than 3 faults per home. And not that all development homes are bad. I think, I know people who live in them and after their things got fixed and but I know everybody that moved into high end development homes, that were built after, especially after the late 90s, um, moderate to major repairs are always required in virtually everybody I know. I know that's anecdotal, and I'm sure I can find data if I research that. But I watch the home inspectors on YouTube. They're funny as hell. Some of their shorts, like, you go into the attic and not a single roofing nail made it through the beam, like across several beams. There's nails, but none of them are actually through, the beam. Okay, your workers don't even know how to put nails into a beam. This is how bad you're making homes. My brother worked construction in Las Vegas in really early aughts. He's going, yeah. He's like, dude, we're building homes that they're so shitty. He goes zero insulation, and some of these don't even have particle boards. They're just wrapping and siding. They're like, these are almost no insulation homes. I'm like, what do you do in the winter? And he goes, I guess they're expected to have gigantic energy bills. You know, can you imagine how crappily the next generation of homes will be built if you have super hot spots caused by $17 trillion of magical money raining down on America? Those super hot spots would get housing built so crappily, so fast. Probably, the malinvestment for the rush would eat up so much of your 17 trillion, especially in the window we're talking about. It's just even if he meant it oh, I meant over the next 2 years before the midterms. Okay. Even at 2 years, adding 60% of the GDP over 2 years is freaking insane. Okay. That doesn't even make the simplest of economic sense or policy sense that you would say what you said. That's just mind boggling. Now, the reason they're going to get challenged, and you're going to see many, many reports about stopping the Smith report, is because this has been long known, according to ABC News. They have a lot of phone traffic. maybe 98% of it, 99% of it is completely innocent, nothing tied to anything. But those one or two phone calls to those militia leaders, that may spell a different story. That little text message they caught on somebody else's phone when they got arrested by the FBI, and it had your contact information in there, and the Smith investigation put two and two together. Those connections, when they are revealed, that's what they're worried about. A lot of their defenses are just performative. What Josh Hawley and Marsha Blackburn have said, according to reporting, just, oh, we're privileged, we don't like it. Well, you do have a privilege in Congress, but you don't have the privilege to be associated in a massive crime. One of the worst political crimes in in the American history. You don't have a right to do that. Nobody has the right to do that. Your office isn't a blanket to criminal activity, including accessory before or after the fact. Okay. So the 60 Minutes interview, to wrap it up, yeah, total disaster. And um, there's probably a follow up to this. I haven't seen the whole back roll that they had to edit for time. Even though he sued because that's what he claimed was improper editing in the other interview, and they were dumb enough to give him money. These are all these lawsuits are shakedowns. I'm glad the lawyers on YouTube are agreeing with me because they just have that whole criminal vibe to me. You owe me money. It'd be a shame for your deli to suddenly burn down, or your cable TV company, or your production outfit, or your bank. And this is where maybe the judges will quickly tell the senators they don't really have a claim. Is how do they have a claim if you're investing a widespread conspiracy, and that conspiracy was to defraud the United States government? And you have all these people who have already been identified members of that conspiracy who had already committed, pleaded guilty to their crimes, and some of them were serving times or were already out. So you knew the you have established the fact that a criminal conspiracy does exist, and it exists on multiple layers. The FBI investigation showed that. So where is your defense that because it's you, because you so wonderful, the evidence that you may have been involved in the greater conspiracy, which we know exists. That's an established fact. There is a conspiracy to commit an insurrection. Okay. Trump's pardons doesn't erase that fact. That's still a fact in hand. They are still guilty, by the way. They're just out of prison. They are pardoned for their crime. They're not innocent of their crime. But all those pardons were dangles to a subculture. This ridiculous 60 Minutes interview, same thing. But man, if you're a business lead, you got to be sitting there shaking your head, worried as hell. Because how do you predict forward if you're running a large company? The big ones, $1 billion and more. How do you predict forward when you got maniac spouting off like this? Because if I was a CFO of a big company, I'd be start worrying about my electricity bills, my transportation costs, my airline tickets. Big business loves to travel. Okay. If he said what he said was true, it would be a whole different dynamic in the economy. And I'm sure there's people a lot smarter in business than I am. Okay. They're running big companies are going, what the flag nog? What the hell? Why is he doing this? This doesn't make any sense. Unless we've got a diminished capacity problem. And if that's the case, then someone else is running the country. It's like Lord of the Rings, the king under the spell. They're whispering in his ear, you know? So that's what I got for tonight. So I'll probably go down another little sidetrack on this. And there's another essay I started. I'll get that probably done the next couple of days. But cautiously go forward because this doesn't make any sense. This interview was a complete disaster. It didn't represent reality at all. It probably, if I had to guess, it sent shockwaves to the executives who aren't drinking the flavor aid. Everybody else is like, holy cow, what the hell are we going to do? And I think one of those industries is the insurance market. Like if you cause mania at this level as the president, we're in trouble. So, okay. Until next time, think about it.